In July 2016, Lucy Letby was removed from the neonatal unit at the County Chester Hospital. Documents released by the Thirlwell Inquiry have now revealed the full picture of the events that preceded the decision of Cheshire Police to launch an investigation in May 2017. In this video, we're going to discuss the important events that led to this momentous and regrettable decision. On the 18th of July 2016, legal representative Corinne Slingo had told numerous key personnel from the Counties of Chester, including lawyer Ian Pace, who will become significant imminently, several important things. The only current evidence of any clinical concern, Slingo began, is the potentially circumstantial fact that one particular nurse was on shift on more occasions than others at the point when neonatal deaths arose. There are also deaths and deteriorations that occurred when Lucy was not on shift. So of course immediately that's very significant. No incidents have been linked to her practice. No previous concerns or whistleblowing has arisen in respect of the individual or the unit. There is currently no cause of death or thematic clinical basis to suggest the deaths are connected to each other or connected by a common intervention, whether deliberate or not. Approximately 75% of the deaths have also been through the coronial system, with no common feature or issue arising from the individual's care. Of course, this is very significant because the coronial system has, of course, examined the infants. There does not currently appear to be any reason to formally alert the police to these issues, as there is nothing upon which one might reasonably base a suspicion of a criminal offence having been committed. There is a likelihood that having changed the admissions criteria to remove the highest risk of sub-32-week neonates, that the mortality rate will drop significantly in any event, and that could easily be interpreted as being due to the removal of the individual as the timescales coincide. That may make life much more difficult for her and also for the Trust in trying to identify the true cause of the spike in mortality for this group of babies. So obviously that's an understatement that life could be made more difficult for Lucy, but you can see the significance of this. On the one hand, we've heard that Lucy was removed from the unit and then the death and collapses stopped. That's not true in and of itself, but also this was predicted at the time by Corinne Slingo, this legal representative. On the same day, the 18th of July 2016, lawyer Ian Pace, mentioned earlier, wrote to the HR director of the County of Chester, Sue Hodkinson. In this email, the following statement was made. The Trust now want to consider redeploying Lucy to another area of the Trust pending further investigations on the unit. The evidence does not at the moment say that it is her, and this will only become clear pending completion of the internal review. We will be discussing that internal review later in this timeline. At this point, the line manager and deputy director of nursing had held a meeting with Lucy. They framed the meeting on the basis that they wanted to provide her with support and arrange for her to continue working on the unit with close clinical supervision. Ian Pace explained that if we are holding a meeting with Lucy and her Royal College of Nursing representative, then we should explain the reasons for the change. We may also want to refer to the fact that this action is being taken not only in the interest of patient safety, which of course is critical, but also to protect Lucy's position going forward. I explained that we should explain to her that this is a completely neutral act and is being taken to allow a preliminary investigation to be undertaken on the ward. It was my view that provided we can show we've genuinely applied our minds to the decision as to redeployment and we can show that this is justified in the circumstances, then I would expect that the prospects of a constructive unfair dismissal claim on this basis alone would be defendable. Now this is significant because later on Ian Pace completely changes his opinion after the outcome of the grievance and says that the best case scenario for us would be a constructive dismissal. So that's obviously very significant. So Ian Pace continues, I explained to Sue that even if the claim for constructive unfair dismissal was successful, this would be capped compensation. Sue confirmed that Lucy had been employed by the Trust for over 2 years. I explained that this is a Band 6, which she confirmed, and roughly speaking, the compensatory award would be capped at about the figure has been redacted after a rough calculation of her annual salary, which we would confirm later, plus a basic award. So obviously we can't see her annual salary here, but he's giving a rough idea of what she could be expected to receive. So then on the 28th of October 2016, Ian Pace writes a note based on a telephone conversation with Sue Hodkinson, which includes the following information. The draft external review has now been concluded. This review criticised the hospital for not entering into a full process based on the various allegations that had been raised. It also criticised the trust for not telling Lucy the comments and allegations that were raised at the time. There is no suggestion in the external review that Lucy was involved, simply referring to clinicians having a gut feel. There is a significant amount that needs to be done regarding staffing to reinstate the unit back to its previous standard. Failings found in terms of neonatal network indicate that it will remain at the same level for some time. Indeed, just to provide a bit of commentary on that, it's still at the same level today. Lucy still may resign and claim constructive dismissal because we have excluded her from her duty. This type of claim will be capped unless she can show there is a whistleblowing element to it, in which case exposure would be unlimited. I said that overall, bearing in mind her salary, the final exposure isn't all too great for a constructive unfair dismissal only claim. On balance, the trust would rather this than potential patient safety issues and the reputational impact this would have. So what Ian Pace is saying here is we'd rather have Lucy go for constructive dismissal than have what were very obvious issues being unleashed on the system of tribunal and potential compensation. With regard to this, it's interesting that the most recent internal processes at the Council of Chester indicate no evidence of malfeasance. On the 14th of February 2017, Ian Harvey informed Dr. Jane Horden that, indicating the reduction in deaths after downgrading, that the consultants are being selective and disingenuous in that there is no comparison between the intensity of the workload before and after we downgraded the unit, and we believe that they are trying to suggest that the only significant change has been reassigning the member of staff, which we did to protect that member. On the 3rd of April 2017, Stephen Cross, Director of Legal Services and Head of Corporate Affairs at the hospital, had written that, in our view, there is no evidence to justify a criminal investigation. On the 13th of April 2017, an extraordinary board meeting at the Council of Chester asserted that neither the Royal College Review or Dr. Horden's review identified any criminal issues. And then on the 2nd of May 2017, Tony Chambers, Chief Executive at the Council of Chester, wrote to Cheshire Police Chief Constable Simon Byrne asking the constabulary to conduct a forensic investigation into the circumstances surrounding the deaths at the hospital with a view to excluding any unnatural causes. It is notable here that this was conducted on the advice of Nigel Wenham, who sat on the Child Death Overview panel. Now, I've perhaps taken it a little bit easy on Wenham on this channel because he hasn't been particularly public. However, it's clear from this document that Wenham has been instrumental in the decision to investigate. Wenham is later present at other meetings, and Wenham also made an emotional and emotive statement indicating a significant lack of professionalism at the Thirlwell inquiry. All of these issues are discussed in my forthcoming book. On the 4th of May 2017, in an internal email, Dr. Ravi Jayaram mentioned that it would be important for the police to have their interest piqued. Then on the 5th of May 2017, at the culmination of this, there's the police document which commences Operation Hummingbird, and there's a brief mention of the purported statistical relationship between Lucy and collapses on the unit before the following statement is made: there is no evidence other than coincidence. At this time, Senior Coroner's Officer Stephanie Davies, who had been assigned to work on the case, completed her review citing missing jigsaw pieces in some of the cases but no evidence of malfeasance. Based on information that has since come to light, Stephanie now considers this case to be a miscarriage of justice. If you look for one of the interviews that I conducted with Stephanie, you can hear a lot more about her opinion on this case and what occurred in May when she conducted her review. On the 10th of May 2017, Dr. Ravi Jayaram corresponds with the aforementioned Nigel Wenham of the Cheshire Constabulary in order to arrange what he describes as a meeting at Blackham Police Station. This is initially arranged to be a meeting with just Dr. Jayaram, with no other representatives from the Countess of Chester in attendance. On the same day, a document entitled Reasons for Concerns Regarding a Possible Criminal Cause for Increased Neonatal Mortality at the Countess of Chester, June 2015 to July 2016 is distributed to Cheshire Police. This document is notable today for the misleading and poorly founded nature of its content. On the 12th of May 2017, the Cheshire Constabulary meet with Tony Chambers, Ian Harvey and Stephen Cross, all executives from the counties of Chester. The following conclusions are drawn. Cheshire Constabulary are not clinical experts. I think you can reasonably describe that as an understatement. Any reports or information that is presented that may potentially constitute as evidence for criminal offence, then as soon as that threshold is met, it will be picked up as a criminal investigation. It does not feel like this stage is being met at present. At this stage, the counties of Chester have exhausted all lines possible and there is nothing that could potentially be evidence of a criminal investigation. The concerns raised by the consultants have been raised previously and there is nothing they are aware of that would consider or believe that potential criminal offences may have been committed. Darren Martland from Cheshire Police stated that at present there does not appear to be any evidence of a criminal wrongdoing from the reports and reviews which would warrant a police-led criminal investigation. And then on the 15th of May 2017, Breary and Jayaram convinced Cheshire Police to investigate. What was initially arranged as a meeting between Dr. Jayaram and Cheshire Police becomes a meeting with Dr. Stephen Breary, Dr. Ravi Jayaram, Dr. Susie Holt and Cheshire Police. Dr. Susie Holt, as we've established previously, doesn't say a great deal, but Dr. Stephen Breary simply invites himself to the meeting. The pair of consultants then proceed to seed the police with information of varying degrees of accuracy, much of it inaccurate. And then on the 18th of May 2017, there are no further internal documents available from Cheshire Police in the Thirlwell inquiry, but by this 18th of May date, we know they've informed the Guardian newspaper they are now treating the deaths on the unit as suspicious. Just 6 days previously, prior to the intervention of Dr. Breary and Dr. Jayaram, Cheshire Police saw no reason to investigate and no evidence of any wrongdoing. According to the latest version of events given by Dr. Dewi Evans, he read about the issue at the County of Chester in The Guardian on what is presumed to be this date. It should be noted that Dr. Evans has given a different account of events on more than one previous occasion. So then in May 2017, and presumably after the 18th of May, Dr. Evans engages in email correspondence with the National Crime Agency, opining that the situation in Chester seems to be his kind of case. Dr. Evans has denied the fact that he was attempting to insert himself into the process. On the 10th of July 2017, based on documents that I have now seen, it is clear that Dr. Evans meets with Cheshire Police for the first time. An approximate date for this meeting is the 10th of July 2017. Within minutes of walking into the police station, Dr. Evans has already informed Cheshire Police that there is definitely inflicted harm in these cases. And then from July 2017 onwards, after everything that has occurred previously, the Cheshire Constabulary then actively involves Dr. Stephen Breary and Dr. Ravi Jayaram in the selection of cases for the investigation. This was known already but has recently been further confirmed in email correspondence between Peter Elston and Dr. Dewi Evans. This is particularly significant as it is Dr. Stephen Breary who ultimately identifies the insulin cases that will be central to the indictment. This has been confirmed in interviews with both Vanity Fair and The Observer. Such was the important role of the consultants in the police investigation. They were described by Paul Hughes of Cheshire Police as the golden thread in the investigation. This follows a period where Dr. Breary in particular was the ringleader of a 2-year campaign against Lucy Letby. Breary and Jayaram are then the primary instigators of the police investigation and are involved in the investigation itself, at which point they locate, or Breary locates, the critical insulin cases, and then finally they give evidence against Lucy Letby in court. On the 3rd of July 2018, Lucy Letby is arrested for the first time and taken to the aforementioned Blackham police station near Chester. Dr. Evans has repeatedly claimed that he didn't know the name of Lucy Letby when he wrote his initial reports. However, he filed multiple reports after Lucy Letby was arrested. This arrest was publicised and Evans definitely knew the name of Lucy Letby at this point, although there is also evidence that the names of nurses and doctors were all over the notes that was initially examined by Evans. But at some point in 2019, after the initial arrest of Lucy Letby, Dr. Evans filed a new report on Child P. It hasn't been possible to determine the exact date of this report, but he files multiple reports when knowing the name of Lucy Letby in the years to follow. Later in 2019, Dr. Evans files a report on Child O, and then we can go through the precise dates of every other report that was filed. I should emphasise at this point, these are just the reports that I know about. It's possible that he filed other reports that haven't turned up yet or haven't been included in court reporting or transcripts that I've seen, because we don't have every single transcript of the court case. But we'll go through what we do have. 17th of January 2019, Dr. Evans files a new report on Child N. 24th of March 2019, Evans files a new report on Child G. 25th of March 2019, Evans files a new report on Child I. 26th of March 2019, Evans files a new report on Child C. 3rd of June 2019, Evans files a new report on Child A. 3rd of June 2019, Evans files a new report on Child B. On the 18th of October 2020, Evans files yet another report on Child A. Also on the 18th of October, Evans files a further report on Child B. On the 24th of June 2021, Evans files another report on Child N. Also on the 24th, Evans files another report on Child I. On the 17th of October 2021, Evans files yet another report on Child G. On the 19th of October 2021, Evans files yet another report on Child C. On the 19th of October 2021, Evans files yet another report on Child I. On the 21st of October 2021, Evans files further reports on Child N, Child G, and yet another report on Child I. On the 29th of October 2021, Evans files further reports on Child C, and yes, Child I again. On the 14th of April 2022, Evans files yet another report on Child I. On the 22nd of April 2022, Evans files yet another report on Child G. On the 14th of September 2022, Evans incredibly files yet another report on Child G. And then on the 1st of November 2022, during the court case itself, Evans files yet another report on Child C. And then from 2023 onwards, there have been further reports filed by Evans after the conviction of Lucy Letby that have relevance to at least 3 infants in the case. The full scale of these reports is not known. As mentioned, these are only the reports that I've been able to corroborate. Considering the lack of transparency from the criminal justice system, there could very well be other reports that also exist. On the 3rd of July 2019, Evans filed a witness statement to Cheshire Police. We'll be going through the entirety of this witness statement in the foreseeable future. At the time of this statement being authored, Dr. Evans had written 40 reports already on 17 infants. This number would more than double by the time of the court case, and he would then change his opinion again during and after the court case. At this stage, there had still been no evidence sought from a radiographer. We cannot know for certain, but I suspect at this point, by which time Lucy Letby had been arrested twice, and I should say she was accused of murder in a second interview quite explicitly, I think on several occasions, there was still no medical opinion provided to Cheshire Police other than that of Dr. Evans. If they haven't managed to get a radiography opinion regarding the central contention of the entire case, it doesn't bode well for the investigation as a whole. Let me also remind you that when Paul Hughes was interviewed by Liz Hull, he conceded that Dr. Evans was the only medic that had examined the case when Lucy was first arrested in 2018. In this interview, he implied that they were on the verge of receiving radiography and haematology information, not that the latter is particularly relevant, whereas in fact 12 months later they still hadn't received anything from Professor Arthurs. And we see later in the same statement of Dr. Evans that he comments, at the time of preparing this statement, I do not have access to an independent radiology opinion regarding the findings of chest x-rays. So we'll go over this full statement at some point in the foreseeable future. But that's the full timeline of everything associated with the dates 2016 to 2017. We see how it was that Cheshire Police came to investigate the Counter Chester. Of course, we know by now that their investigation was fatally flawed. Frankly, it was utterly incompetent. There is much more detail on all of these issues, on the background to the police investigation, the background to the hospital, all of the medical information on which Lucy Letby was convicted, all of the anecdotal evidence, everything that occurred in court. Far more detail on everything that's discussed in this video in my forthcoming book, Reasonable Doubt, Examining the Case of Lucy Letby, which will be released on the 9th of July in hardback, paperback, audiobook and e-back format. Thank you for watching and look forward to speaking to you all again soon.